Hello again and welcome back to another video. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about communication styles and communication in relationships. So in general, I think that we all know communication is important just in life. It's good to be able to communicate well, right? But that carries over into our relationships, which I feel is very important. It's very important if you're, in relationships with people that you love, you care about, friendships, whatever, and you want these people around for a long time, you want these relationships to continue, then it's important that we understand how to communicate properly with these people in our lives. I think that it's important that we ask ourselves, how do we communicate? How do you communicate? What is your communication style? And do you understand where that stems from? Where that comes from? Why you communicate the way you do? It's always important. I always say, figure out why you do the things you do. When you figure out why you do the things you do, there's a deep understanding and you can start to improve and fix yourself and move from a healthier space. So, we each come from different backgrounds. We are, raised differently. Our parents communicated with us, each differently. And so we're all going to communicate differently. We're all going to approach things differently, right? So, let's say that you grew up in a home where there was arguing constantly, there was yelling, and that's just really how your parents communicated. Maybe they didn't yell at you. Maybe they did, but maybe they just communicated like that with each other, and that's just what you've seen, and so that's normal to you. So now in your adult life, in your relationships, you yell and argue and scream, and that's just, maybe you don't mean any harm, but that's just what you're used to. That's what you've seen, and so now that's how you communicate, right? So let's come from a different angle. So for me, I come from a home where there was not a lot of expressing of emotions and feelings, like at all, for the most part. Not a lot of sharing in that way. A home where I would say there was like emotional neglect to some extent. So for me, or for a person like that, it would be hard to express and share and open up in relationships, right? So let's say you have these two people together in a relationship, friendship, whatever. They're going to butt heads. This person that argues and screams all the time is not going to understand this person that doesn't open up at all and doesn't really have much to say. I mean, and vice versa. It's just, not going to work. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be complicated. So it's important that we each figure out for ourselves first, because we need to take responsibility for ourselves. Figure out how we communicate. What is our communication style and where that stems from? So for me, I'm gonna, I always like to talk from experience. So that's the type of household I grew up in, where there was not a lot of sharing. Although I was able to overcome that and work through the traumas, from that. And now I feel like I communicate very well. I feel like I'm very open and I share. And, I'm proud of myself for working through that. But at the same time, I figured out that I still have unhealed traumas that I need to work through, because while I communicate well now and I was able to work through those issues, I am still very much triggered. So if I'm dealing with someone and having a conversation, communicating with someone who emulates the actions of what I've seen growing up in my childhood. So for instance, I'm talking or having a conversation with someone who is not opening up. I'm sharing freely, expressing myself, and this person is not opening up, and they're not. I would say I feel like maybe they're not putting in the effort that I am, as far as trying to, I don't want to say communicate, but as far as giving to the relationship or the conversation, I can become very triggered. I can become very triggered about that. I've figured that out about myself. I become triggered, and I can become very harsh in my words and aggressive in my words. And that is because, I guess, that affects me still. I'm still mentally and emotionally affected by that lack of expression and of sharing and of the emotions as a child. So communicating with that type of person can be frustrating for me. So I figured that out. And so now I'm able to begin working through that and healing that unhealed trauma so that I can now move forward from a healthier space in all of my relationships and communicating healthier with others. And it's important, this is really important because a lot of people do this, but it's important that we stop blaming, our childhood and what our parents did to us on the way we act and the way we move in life, because we've all been through things. I don't think there's anyone who's had a perfect childhood and, their parents didn't screw them up in some way, because, our parents weren't perfect. They did the best they could, but they were dealing with their unhealed traumas from their childhood and from their parents. And, they brought them into our lives. And so, that's just, it is what it is. It can't be changed, but what can be changed is what you do now. So you can move forward, realize that, recognize, okay, yeah, my parents did this or they didn't do that. And so now that's why I'm like that. But you have to do something about it. You can't continue your whole life to say, that's just what I'm used to. This is what I grew up around. I can't help it, but you can help it. You can do something about it, because in this particular circumstance of communication, if you care about these people that you're in relationships with, if you care about these relationships, then you will do something about it. And this is just like with other things in life as well. Blaming your childhood and your parents is only going to get you so far. Like, at some point you have to grow up and take accountability and do what you need to do so that you can be a better person for you, and so that you don't continue on and, like, your parents brought this into your life, these traumas to you. You don't want to give those to your children and have them dealing with shit, and then they are dealing with it with their kids and in their relationships. So just make it in here with you. Work through all of the stuff that you need to work through, and don't let this stuff continue on into your child's life, into their children's lives. Take accountability. And so it's so important to figure out how you communicate. Just, if you're in a romantic relationship or even a friendship, it depends on how close you are with your friends. You can, if you care enough, if you really care enough, because, a lot of people, they don't put in efforts, if you really care enough, sit down with this person, schedule a time, sit down and talk. Like, I want to make sure that, we keep our relationship strong. Let's figure out how we're communicating with each other and how we can communicate with each other better. So put in the effort, put in the effort into yourself and bettering yourself, and put in the effort into your relationships, because if it's important to you, you will. And if it's not important to you, then you won't. So I wanted to share this today, and I hope it helps somebody. So with that being said, I will see you guys in the next video.